This is only for family. Those were the words. And they weren't whispered. They were said clearly, calmly, and without shame, while I was standing right there, holding a bowl of mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving Day. Before I continue, if you love emotional, powerful family stories like this, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know who is here with me. Now listen closely, because this moment changed my life. The house was full. Laughter echoed off the walls. The smell of turkey and gravy filled the air. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked like family. Everyone, except me. When those words hit my ears, my hands froze mid-air. The bowl felt heavy, like it weighed 100 pounds. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I had just heard. Only for family. I looked around, waiting for someone to correct him. Waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a joke. No one did. No one even looked at me. That's when I realized. They meant it. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I felt small. Invisible. Like I didn't exist in my own child's home. Then it got worse. He turned toward me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "We're about to talk about something private. You can wait in the living room." The living room. Not, "Mom, please sit." Not, "We'll talk later." Just, "Go away." I stood there, surrounded by people, and felt completely alone. Slowly, I placed the bowl on the table. My hands were shaking. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. No one said, "She's family too." I turned and walked toward the living room, my legs weak, my eyes burning. But before I could sit down, I heard something that made me stop cold. "She doesn't need to know yet." Yet. That word sliced through me. Didn't need to know what? I stayed still, hidden just enough by the wall to hear them. My heart beat louder with every second. Then I heard this. "After dinner, we'll tell her. She won't like it. But it's already decided." Already decided. My knees almost gave out. Decided what? About me? About where I live? About whether I still belong? I pressed my hand against the wall to keep from falling. My mind raced, filling with fear, confusion, and pain. I wanted to walk back in there. I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. But instead, I listened. And what I was about to learn would change everything. But to understand how it reached this point, you need to know what happened before Thanksgiving. Because this silence didn't start that day. It started the moment I moved into this house, believing I was still family. And as I sat alone in the living room, pretending to watch TV, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. A thick brown folder sat on the dining table. My name was written on it. That was when I knew. Whatever they were planning, it was serious. And whatever was inside that folder was about to turn my life upside down. Because after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. And I had no idea whether I was about to lose my home or lose my child. I sat there on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, pretending to watch a show I couldn't even hear. My ears were still tuned to the dining room. Every laugh felt sharp. Every clink of a fork felt loud. Every second felt heavy. I kept thinking about that folder. Brown. Thick. My name written clearly on the front. I had never seen it before. My heart told me it was not good news. I folded my hands together to stop them from shaking. I told myself to breathe. In. Out. Slow. Quiet. I did not want them to know I was listening. I did not want them to know I was scared. From the dining room, voices floated in and out. Sometimes low. Sometimes quick. Sometimes careful. I heard my child laugh. That hurt the most. How could he laugh when my life was sitting inside that folder? I tried to remember when things first started to feel wrong. At first, Moving into this house felt like a blessing. After my husband passed away, the silence in my old home was too loud. Every room reminded me of him. Every night felt too long. When my child said, "You don't have to be alone. Come stay with us," I cried. I believed those words came from love. I packed my clothes. I packed my memories. I packed my whole life into a few boxes and brought them into this house. I thought this would be my safe place. In the beginning, I helped with everything. I cooked. I cleaned. I watched the child when they were busy. I stayed quiet. I stayed grateful. I told myself, don't be a burden. But slowly, the warmth faded. It started with looks, then sighs, then silence. If I spoke too much, the room grew quiet. If I asked a question, answers came late. If I shared a memory, eyes rolled. I learned to speak less. I learned to move carefully. I learned to make myself small. Back in the living room, I heard chairs scrape the floor. Dinner was ending. My chest tightened. This was it. Soon they would tell me. I stood up and smoothed my clothes. I wanted to look calm. I wanted to look strong. I wanted to look like I wasn't breaking inside. They walked into the living room one by one, smiling, relaxed, full. I felt empty. "Let's talk," my child said, sitting across from me. Everyone else stayed standing, watching, waiting. I looked at the folder now in his hands. My name faced me, clear, bold, final. My mouth felt dry. "What is this?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. That silence told me everything. "This is just something we need to discuss as a family," he said. I swallowed hard. "I am family," I replied softly. No one spoke. That silence was louder than shouting. He opened the folder. Inside were papers. Many papers. I recognized some words. Plan. Decision. Next steps. My heart started racing. "We think it's time to make some changes," he said. "Changes?" I repeated. "Yes," his wife said quickly. "Nothing personal. Just practical." Practical. That word felt cold. "We think it would be better if you moved out," my child said. The room spun. Moved out. "But this is my home," I whispered. "It's our home," his wife corrected. I felt something crack inside my chest. They kept talking, but their words blurred together. Too crowded. Different needs. Better for everyone. Already planned. Already planned. I looked at the papers again. Dates. Numbers. Addresses. They had been planning this for a while. Without me. "You didn't even ask me," I said. "We didn't want to upset you," he replied. I almost laughed. Too late. Where would I go? I asked. There was another pause. That pause scared me more than anything else. "We found a place," he finally said. "A place." I repeated. "Yes," his wife said. "It's affordable. Quiet. Simple. Simple." That word sounded like a loan. I leaned forward and looked at the address. My heart sank. It was far. Very far. Away from everything I knew. Away from my child. Away from my grandchild. Away from my life. "When?" I asked. He looked down. "Soon." "How soon?" I pressed. He took a breath. "After the holidays." After the holidays. So that's why they waited until Thanksgiving. So they could smile. So they could eat. So they could pretend. And then push me out. I felt my eyes burn, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. "I gave everything to this family," I said quietly. "Everything." No one answered. That silence again. Then I noticed something else inside the folder. Another paper. Different. Official. I reached for it. "What is this?" I asked. He tried to pull the folder back. Don't. But I had already seen the words at the top. Notice. My heart stopped. What notice? I asked. His wife spoke before he could. It's just a form. Nothing serious. I took it out. My hands shook as I read. It was a notice. A deadline. A date. They had already set the day I had to leave. My vision blurred. You were going to give me this, without even talking to me first? I asked. He looked away. That was my answer. I slowly placed the paper back into the folder. The room felt tight. Heavy. Like the walls were closing in. I stood up. I need some air, I said. No one stopped me. I walked to my room and closed the door behind me. The moment it shut, my strength disappeared. I slid down to the floor and covered my mouth so they wouldn't hear me cry. I had been silenced. Decided for. Pushed aside. But as I sat there, something else rose inside me. Not fear. Not sadness. Anger. Because they thought I would accept this quietly. They thought I would pack my bags and disappear. They thought wrong. As I wiped my tears, my eyes fell on something in the corner of the room. A small locked box. One they had never asked about. One they had forgotten. Inside that box was something they didn't know about. Something that could change everything. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. I stayed on the floor for a long time. The house was quiet now. The laughter was gone. The plates had been cleared. Doors opened and closed softly down the hallway. Life continued, like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. I slowly stood up and walked toward the small locked box in the corner of the room. It had been there since the day I moved in. I kept it tucked away, out of sight, out of mind. No one ever asked about it. No one ever cared. I knelt down and ran my fingers over the top. The lock was old. Scratched. Worn. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small key I always carried with me. My hands were steady now. I unlocked the box. Inside were papers. Letters. Receipts. Old envelopes tied together with a string. A small notebook with pages filled edge to edge. My life. My truth. Things I had kept quiet about for years. I picked up the notebook and opened it. The first page was dated long ago, back when I still believed love meant loyalty. Back when I believed silence kept peace. I had started writing because I had no one to talk to. Every time I tried to speak, I was told I was overthinking. Being dramatic. Causing problems. So I wrote instead. I wrote about the money I gave to help buy this house. I wrote about the savings I emptied when times were hard. I wrote about promises made at kitchen tables and broken behind closed doors. I wrote everything. I closed the notebook and leaned back against the bed. They thought I had nothing. They thought I depended on them. They thought I was weak. I smiled for the first time that night. A soft knock came at my door. My heart jumped. Are you okay? A voice asked. I took a breath and locked the box again. I'm fine, I said. There was a pause. We'll talk more tomorrow, the voice said. Tomorrow. They always said tomorrow. Footsteps walked away. I waited until the house was silent again. Then I opened the box one more time and pulled out an envelope. Inside were copies of documents. Signatures. Dates. Amounts. Proof. I remembered the day I signed those papers. Your family, they said. We'll take care of you, they said. This is just temporary, they said. I folded the papers carefully and placed them back in the box. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that folder on the table. I heard those words again. Only for family. When morning came, the house smelled like coffee and leftovers. I stayed in my room, listening. They spoke quietly again. Planning. Deciding. Moving on. I stepped into the hallway. The conversation stopped. They looked at me like I had interrupted something important. "Good morning," I said. "Morning," came a few weak replies. No one mentioned last night. No one apologized. No one explained. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table. The folder was gone, but the feeling remained. Later that day, I overheard another conversation. "She'll calm down," one voice said. "She always does," another replied. That sentence hurt more than anything else. They were right. I always did. Until now. That afternoon, I left the house. No one asked where I was going. No one cared. I walked slowly, letting the cool air clear my head. With every step, my thoughts became sharper. I knew what I had to do. But it would not be easy. And it would not be quiet. I returned home hours later and went straight to my room. I opened the box again. This time, I took out everything. I spread the papers across the bed. I read every word. I checked every date. I remembered every promise. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to push me out, I would not leave empty-handed. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. It was addressed to me. Not from them. From someone else. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were words that made my heart race. Words that confirmed what I had suspected for years. Words that proved I was not just a guest in that house. I was more. Much more. And if I chose to speak, their silence would shatter. I folded the letter slowly and looked toward the door. Because I knew one thing for sure now. They had no idea what was coming. And when they found out, nothing would ever be the same. I held the letter in my hands for a long time before I read it again. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Every word felt heavy, final, powerful. I sat on the edge of the bed, the papers from the locked box spread out beside me, and read the letter slowly, line by line, letting it sink in. It confirmed something I had been afraid to admit to myself for years. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't confused. I wasn't wrong. The house I was living in, the one they now wanted me out of, was not as simple as they made it sound. My name mattered. My signature mattered. My money mattered. And the truth was written clearly, in black ink, on white paper. I folded the letter and placed it carefully inside the notebook. Then I closed the box. Not because I was done, but because I was ready. That morning, I stepped out of my room with a different posture. My shoulders were straighter. My steps were slower, calmer. They noticed. I could tell. Eyes followed me as I walked into the kitchen. The talking stopped again. "Morning," I said. "Morning," came the replies. Polite. Careful. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table. No one mentioned the notice. No one mentioned moving. No one mentioned Thanksgiving. They acted like everything was normal. But I wasn't fooled. Normal was gone. Later that day, I heard them whispering again. "She hasn't said anything," one voice said. "That's good," another replied. "Maybe she accepted it." Accepted it. I almost laughed. That evening, I made dinner. I cooked slowly, quietly, the way I always did. I set the table. I cleaned up afterward. I watched them relax. I watched them believe they were in control. After dinner, I spoke. "I need to ask something," I said calmly. They all looked up at once. "What?" one of them asked. "Why didn't you talk to me before making your decision?" I asked. There it was. The question they didn't want. A long pause followed. "We didn't want to stress you," came the answer. "I see," I said. I nodded and stood up. "That's all," I added. I walked back to my room. Behind me, I heard a sigh of relief. They thought it was over. That night, I took the letter and the documents out again and placed them into a folder of my own. Not brown. Blue. Strong. Clear. I wrote a few notes in the notebook, dates and times, conversations I remembered clearly. I slept better than I had in days. The next morning, I left the house early. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I took a bus across town. The building I walked into was quiet and serious. People spoke in low voices. Papers were everywhere. I sat down and waited. When my turn came, I handed over the documents. The person reading them didn't rush. They read carefully. Then they looked up at me. "These are important," they said. "I know," I replied. "Why are you bringing them now?" they asked. "Because I was told I don't belong," I said. They nodded slowly. "We'll need time," they said. "But you should know, you have rights." That word echoed in my head. Rights. I thanked them and left. On the way home, my phone buzzed. A message. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen. Then I typed back. "Out." Nothing more. When I returned to the house, the mood had changed. They were nervous. I could feel it. "You've been gone all day," someone said. "Yes," I replied. "Everything okay?" Another asked. "Yes," I said again. That night, I overheard them talking in the bedroom. "She's acting strange. Do you think she told someone?" "She wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" I sat on my bed and smiled quietly. The next day, the folder came back out. The brown one. It was placed on the table again. This time, it was slid toward me. "We need to set a date," a voice said. I looked at the folder. Then I looked up. "I need time," I said. "How much?" they asked. "A little," I replied. They agreed. Too easily. That worried me. Later that night, I received another letter. This one made my heart pound harder than the first. Because it didn't just confirm my place in that house. It revealed something else. Something they never planned to tell me. Something that explained why they were in such a hurry to push me out. I sat there, reading it again and again, my hands shaking. Because now I knew. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were trying to erase me. And if I didn't act soon, they would succeed. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I would speak. And when I did, they would finally hear me. I woke up before everyone else. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts sound louder than they should. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the words from the letter over and over again. They were in a hurry. That was the truth. They weren't pushing me out because I was old. They weren't pushing me out because the house was crowded. They weren't pushing me out because it was better for everyone. They were pushing me out because time was running out. I sat up slowly and placed my feet on the floor. My hands were steady now. My heart was calm in a strange way, like it had already made peace with what needed to be done. I opened my drawer and took out the blue folder. Inside were the documents. The letters. The notes I had written late at night when no one was watching. I added one more page. A list. Dates. Amounts. Promises. I wrote carefully, making sure nothing was missed. When I finished, I closed the folder and placed it back in the drawer. Not yet. In the kitchen, I heard movement. Cabinets opening. Cups clinking. I walked in. "Morning," I said. "Morning," came a reply, too quick, too polite. I poured myself tea and sat down. No one spoke. The silence stretched. Finally, someone said, "We should talk today." I nodded. "Yes," I said. "We should." They looked surprised. They were used to me avoiding talks like this. Avoiding conflict. Avoiding trouble. Avoiding truth. After breakfast, the brown folder appeared again. It was placed in the center of the table like a warning. "We've been patient," a voice said. "We need to move forward." Forward where? I asked calmly. There was a pause. You know what we mean. I leaned back in my chair. I want to understand something first, I said. Why the rush? No one answered. I looked from face to face. Why now? I repeated. Someone cleared their throat. It's just the right time, came the reply. The right time for who? I stood up. I need to get something, I said. I walked to my room and opened the drawer. I took out the blue folder. When I returned to the table, their eyes followed it. What's that? Someone asked. Something I should have shared earlier, I said. I placed it on the table. They didn't touch it. Before we talk about dates and notices, I continued, I want to talk about this house. The room felt tight. What about it? Someone asked. I want to talk about how it was paid for, I said. Silence. I want to talk about the money I gave, I added. And the promises made when I signed those papers. A chair shifted. That was a long time ago, someone said quickly. Yes, I replied. But it still matters. I opened the folder and slid one document forward. They stared at it. That's not necessary, a voice said. It is to me, I replied. I slid another paper forward. And another. The color drained from one face. Where did you get those? Someone asked. I kept them, I said. Because I trusted no one would ever make me need them. The room was no longer calm. Voices rose. Questions came fast. Excuses followed. You're misunderstanding. That's not what it means. You're confused. I listened quietly. Then I spoke. I am not confused, I said. And I am not leaving until we finish this conversation. The words hung in the air. Someone laughed nervously. You can't just decide that. I looked up. I already did. That's when the tone changed. The kindness disappeared. The patience vanished. You're being difficult, someone snapped. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I said softly. I'm making it honest. I gathered the papers back into the blue folder and stood up. I will not sign anything else, I said. And I will not leave until I've spoken to someone about my rights. You already did, didn't you? Someone asked sharply. I didn't answer. That was answer enough. The room exploded. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew. Fear slipped through their words. You had no right. You went behind our backs. You're trying to ruin everything. I stood there, calm in the middle of the storm. I'm trying to protect myself, I said. That made them angrier. You should be grateful. After everything we've done for you. I looked at them, really looked at them. I was grateful, I said. That's why I stayed quiet for so long. The argument ended suddenly. Not with peace, but with a decision. We'll talk later, someone said. This isn't over. I nodded. I agree, I replied. That night, I returned to my room and locked the door. My phone buzzed. A message. From someone I hadn't heard from in years. I heard what's happening, it read. We need to talk. There's something you don't know. My heart started racing again. Because just when I thought I had uncovered the truth, another door was opening. And whatever was behind it could change everything. I stared at the message on my phone for a long time. The screen glowed softly in the dark room, the words sitting there like a warning. I heard what's happening. We need to talk. There's something you don't know. Something I didn't know. My heart beat faster. After everything I had already uncovered, I didn't know how there could be more. And yet, deep down I felt it. There was always more. There was always another layer they hoped I would never reach. I typed a short reply. When? The response came almost immediately. Tomorrow morning. Somewhere quiet. I locked my phone and leaned back against the bed. The house was silent, but I knew no one was really asleep. Tension filled the walls now. You could feel it, like the air before a storm. I lay awake most of the night, listening to footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing softly, whispers behind walls. They were afraid. And fear makes people careless. When morning came, I moved quietly. I dressed simply, grabbed my bag, and slipped the blue folder inside. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No one asked. Outside, the air was cool. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds. It felt right. Honest. We met at a small cafe far from the house. Almost empty. Quiet enough to talk without being heard. When I walked in, I recognized the face immediately. Older now. Tired. But familiar. We sat across from each other. I didn't know if you'd come, the person said. I needed answers, I replied. They nodded slowly. I should have spoken up years ago, they said. But I didn't think it would go this far. Go where? I asked. They took a deep breath. They're trying to force you out because they're planning to sell. The words hit me like ice water. Sell. I repeated. Yes, they said. The house. Soon. My hands tightened around my cup. They can't, I said. Not without you, they finished. Exactly. My chest tightened. They've been waiting, the person continued. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting until you were quiet enough. Tired enough. The room felt smaller. That's why they're rushing, I whispered. They nodded. They already talked to someone. Quietly. They think once you're gone, everything becomes simple. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. They underestimated me, I said. They always do, the person replied. I opened my bag and pulled out the blue folder. Their eyes widened. You kept everything, they said. Yes, I replied. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I should. They leaned back, relief crossing their face. Good, they said. Because you'll need it. We talked for a long time. About documents. About signatures. About conversations that happened when I wasn't in the room. Every word confirmed what I already felt. They weren't just trying to move me out. They were trying to erase me before the sale. When we finally stood to leave, the person looked at me seriously. They won't stop, they warned. Not now. I won't either, I said. Back at the house, the mood had changed again. Too quiet. Too polite. Someone offered me tea. Someone asked if I was feeling better. I smiled and thanked them. Inside, I was counting steps. That evening, I noticed boxes in the garage. Empty. Stacked neatly. My stomach tightened. They were preparing. Later, I heard raised voices behind a closed door. She knows something. She's acting different. We need to move faster. Move faster. I went back to my room and locked the door. I took out my notebook and wrote everything down while it was fresh. Names. Dates. Words I overheard. Then I heard a knock. Sharp. Firm. We need to talk, a voice said. I opened the door. They stood there, serious, impatient. We've decided on a date, they said. I haven't, I replied. This isn't up for debate, they snapped. I looked at them calmly. It is, I said. And you know why. Their eyes narrowed. You're making things very difficult, they said. I learned from the best, I replied. That night, after everyone went to bed, I heard someone in the garage. Boxes shifting. Tape tearing. They weren't waiting anymore. I sat on my bed, holding the blue folder, my heart pounding. Because now I knew the truth. They weren't planning to ask me to leave. They were planning to remove me. And if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't have a chance to stop them. I did not sleep that night. Every sound in the house felt louder than it should have been. The hum of the refrigerator. The soft tick of the clock in the hallway. The creak of the floor when someone turned in their bed. I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding the blue folder against my chest like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. They were moving fast now. Too fast. That meant one thing. They were scared. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow. Careful. I held my breath. The handle turned slightly, then stopped. Locked. I had locked it before lying down. The footsteps paused, then moved away. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would give me away. In that moment, something inside me changed forever. This was no longer about hurt feelings. This was no longer about being pushed aside. This was about survival. When morning came, I got up early again. I dressed quietly and packed a small bag with only the things I could not afford to lose. The blue folder went in first. I hid the bag under my bed. In the kitchen, they were already awake. Too awake. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Voices that sounded forced. "Good morning," someone said. "Morning," I replied calmly. I poured myself tea and sat down. No one mentioned the boxes. No one mentioned last night. No one mentioned the date. But I could feel it. Something was coming. Later that morning, I overheard a phone call. "Yes, soon. She doesn't know yet. We'll handle it." I stepped back quietly before I could be seen. They thought I didn't know. That was their biggest mistake. By afternoon, the house felt different. Stripped. Bare. Pictures were missing from the walls. Drawers were half empty. Closets looked thinner. They were preparing for life without me. I went to my room and sat on the bed, staring at the door. I needed help. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. I took out my phone and made a call. "I need you," I said when the line connected. "Today." There was a pause. "I'll come," the voice replied. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last long. Because a few hours later, something happened that made my blood run cold. I heard my name. Not spoken. Called. Sharp. Commanding. "Come here." I walked into the living room. They were all there. Standing. Waiting. The brown folder sat on the table again. But this time, there was something new beside it. A suitcase. My suitcase. The one I kept in the back of my closet. My throat tightened. "What is this?" I asked. "We packed for you," someone said, like they were doing me a favor. "Packed for me." "You didn't ask," I said quietly. "We didn't need to," came the reply. "This is happening." I looked at the suitcase. Clothes folded quickly. Carelessly. Like my life was just something to be cleared out. "We found a temporary place," someone continued. "You'll stay there until everything is settled." "Settled how?" I asked. No answer. I felt the room spin. "You're not taking me anywhere," I said. Someone laughed. "You don't have a choice." That was the moment. The exact moment I knew how far they were willing to go. I reached into my pocket and felt the edge of my phone. "I do have a choice," I said. "And I'm making it now." Their faces changed. "What are you talking about?" Someone snapped. "I'm talking about the house," I replied. "The money. The papers. The sale you're planning." Silence. Pure. Heavy. Terrifying. "You don't know what you're saying," one voice said. "I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied. I stepped closer to the table. "You can't sell anything without me," I said. "And you know it." One person slammed their hand down. "This is ridiculous." "No," I said calmly. "This is the truth." The room erupted. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Anger spilled out. "You're lying. You're trying to control us. You're ruining everything." I stood still. "You tried to erase me," I said. "You tried to silence me. And now you're trying to remove me." Someone pointed at the door. Leave, they said. Now. I shook my head. No, I replied. Not like this. That's when it happened. Someone grabbed the suitcase and shoved it toward me. Get out, they shouted. The sound echoed through the house. I felt fear rise in my chest, but I didn't move. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Then I heard the doorbell ring. Sharp. Unexpected. Everyone froze. The room went silent. The doorbell rang again. Slow. Firm. I looked at their faces. Fear flickered across them. I think that's for me, I said softly. I walked toward the door as they stood there, stunned. When I opened it, someone was standing on the porch. Someone I trusted. Someone who knew the truth. And behind them, a second person stepped forward. Someone they never expected to see. The color drained from their faces. Because whatever they thought they were about to do to me just became impossible. The moment I opened the door, the air changed. The house, which had felt tight and heavy for days, suddenly felt exposed. Two people stood on the porch. One of them stepped forward first. I'm here because I was asked to be, they said calmly. No shouting. No anger. Just calm. That calm scared everyone inside the house. The second person stayed a step behind, holding a folder of their own. Thicker than the brown one. Neater. Official. I stepped aside and let them in. No one spoke. No one moved. They stood frozen in the living room, staring like they had just seen a ghost. What is this? Someone finally snapped. Why are they here? I asked them to come, I said. You had no right, another voice said sharply. I had every right, I replied. You just hoped I wouldn't use it. The suitcase still sat in the middle of the room, unfinished, unzipped, like proof of what they were trying to do. The first visitor looked at it, then looked back at them. Is that hers? They asked. No one answered. That tells me enough, they said. We all sat down. Not because anyone invited us to, but because no one knew what else to do. The second visitor opened their folder and placed it on the table. I'm going to explain something very clearly, they said. And I suggest everyone listens. The room was silent. The house cannot be sold, they continued, without her full agreement. Someone laughed nervously. That's not true. The visitor slid a document across the table. It is, they said. And this proves it. Hands trembled as the paper was picked up. Eyes scanned. Faces changed. This doesn't make sense, someone whispered. It makes perfect sense, I said. You just didn't think I knew. The visitor continued. Any attempt to remove her from the property without consent creates serious consequences. The word consequences hung in the air. But she agreed to leave, someone said quickly. I shook my head. No, I didn't. The visitor looked up. Did you sign anything? They asked me. No, I said. Did you verbally agree to a date? They asked. No. They nodded. Then there is no agreement. The room erupted again. Voices overlapping. Excuses flying. Blame shifting. She's confused. She misunderstood. We were just trying to help. The visitor raised a hand. Enough, they said firmly. Silence fell instantly. They turned to me. Do you feel safe here? They asked. The question caught me off guard. I hesitated. Then I answered honestly. No, I said. Someone gasped. That's not fair, a voice shouted. We never hurt you. I looked at them. You tried to force me out, I said. You packed my things. You told me I didn't belong. The visitor nodded slowly. That matters, they said. The second visitor spoke for the first time. There's more, they said, opening their folder. My heart skipped. They pulled out another document. This shows intent, they said. Intent to sell. Intent to remove her before final steps. One person stood up suddenly. "This is a setup," they shouted. "She planned this." I stood up too. "No," I said. "You did." The visitor looked directly at them. "You underestimated her," they said calmly. "And now you're dealing with the result." The room felt smaller. Walls closing in. Someone's voice dropped. "What happens now?" they asked. The visitor looked at me. "That depends on what she wants," they said. All eyes turned to me. For the first time in a long time, no one spoke over me. No one dismissed me. No one silenced me. I took a deep breath. "I want time," I said. "And I want respect." Someone scoffed. The visitor's eyes snapped toward them. "That would be wise," they said. They stood up and gathered their papers. "We'll be in touch," they said. "All of you." They turned to me. "Call if anything changes," they added quietly. I nodded. When the door closed behind them, the house felt hollow. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, someone said, "You embarrassed us." I laughed softly. "You tried to erase me," I replied. "Embarrassment is the least of it." I picked up the suitcase and pushed it back toward them. "Put it away," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, no one knocked on my door. No one argued. No one whispered. But I knew better. This wasn't over. Because power doesn't disappear quietly. And people who try to silence you once will try again. As I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. A new message. Short. Cold. "You think you won. You didn't." I stared at the screen. Because now I knew. They weren't finished. They were just changing tactics. And whatever they planned next would be worse. I read the message again. "You think you won. You didn't." No name. No explanation. Just a threat. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the table. My hands were calm, but my chest felt tight. I had learned something important over the past few days. When people lose control, they don't stop. They change. The house was quiet the next morning, but it was not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that hides plans. Doors closed softly. Voices dropped low. Eyes avoided mine. They were careful now. Too careful. At breakfast, no one mentioned what happened the night before. No one apologized. No one admitted anything. They acted like nothing had changed. But everything had. I noticed small things. A phone call that stopped when I entered the room. A laptop snapped shut too quickly. A look exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. They were doing something. And they were doing it without me. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to get some air. The sky was gray again, heavy like my thoughts. As I stood on the porch, I noticed a car parked down the street. It had been there yesterday. And the day before. The engine wasn't running. No one got out. It just sat there, watching. A chill ran through me. I went back inside and locked my door. That evening, someone knocked. Not gently. Firm. Sharp. "We need to talk," a voice said. I opened the door. They stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You went too far," they said. "I protected myself," I replied. "You brought outsiders into our home," they snapped. "You made it unsafe," I said calmly. Their eyes narrowed. "You're turning people against us." "No," I replied. "You did that yourselves." They stepped closer. "You think papers will save you?" they asked quietly. "You think rules matter?" I held their gaze. "I know they do," I said. For a moment, I thought they might say something worse. Instead, they smiled. And that smile scared me more than anger. "We'll see," they said. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement again. Not footsteps. Dragging. Soft thuds. I sat up in bed, listening. Something was being moved. I stood quietly and cracked my door open just enough to see. The hallway light was on. Boxes lined the wall. More than before. And they weren't empty. I closed the door slowly and locked it. My heart pounded. They were trying again. Not with words. With force. In the morning, I found a note taped to my door. We're giving you 1 week. 1 week. No signature. No apology. Just a demand. I took the note down and folded it neatly. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I made a plan. I spent the day making calls. Quiet calls. Careful calls. I wrote everything down. Times. Words. Actions. That afternoon, the car was back. Closer this time. I stood at the window and watched it. Someone inside lifted a phone. Pointed it toward the house. Toward my window. I stepped back, my heart racing. They weren't just threatening anymore. They were documenting. Preparing. That evening, the house erupted again. You're spying on us, someone shouted. No, I replied. You're spying on me. They slammed a door. Voices rose. Anger spilled. Then came the words I feared most. If you don't leave willingly, someone said, we'll make it impossible for you to stay. I looked at them. Is that a threat? I asked. They didn't answer. That was answer enough. I returned to my room and packed my bag again. Not because I was leaving, but because I needed to be ready. I placed the blue folder inside. My phone charger. My notebook. As I zipped it shut, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one longer. We've already started. You should have stayed quiet. My hands shook. Started what? Before I could think, I heard a loud knock at the front door. 3 knocks. Official. Heavy. Voices followed. Open up. I froze. Then my heart dropped. Because whatever was happening had moved faster than I expected. And I knew without a doubt. This knock was not for a friendly visit. The knocking came again. Harder this time. Open the door. The voice was firm. Cold. Not angry. Controlled. Everyone in the house froze. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. For a second, no one moved. No one breathed. Then someone rushed past me. I'll handle it, they said quickly. The door opened. 2 people stood outside. Serious faces. Dark jackets. Clipboards in hand. My stomach dropped. What is this about? Someone asked, forcing a smile. We received a report, one of them said. We need to speak with her. They looked past the doorway. Straight at me. My chest tightened, but I stepped forward. I'm here, I said. The room erupted. This is ridiculous. She called you, didn't she? She's lying. I raised my hand. I didn't lie, I said. I told the truth. The visitors stepped inside. We'll need to ask a few questions, one of them said calmly. They looked around the house. The boxes. The suitcase. The tension. Their eyes missed nothing. Do you feel safe here? One of them asked me again. The same question. This time, the answer came faster. No, I said. The word landed hard. Someone gasped. Someone cursed under their breath. That's not true, a voice shouted. She's doing this to hurt us. The visitor raised a hand. Please, they said. Let her speak. I took a deep breath. They tried to force me out, I said. They packed my things. They gave me a deadline. They threatened me. That's a lie, someone yelled. Is it? I asked quietly. I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook. I opened it. Dates. Times. Words. I read them out loud. The room went silent. The visitors exchanged looks. Is there anyone else who can confirm this? One of them asked. Before I could answer, a voice came from the doorway. I can. Everyone turned. Someone had arrived. Unexpected. Uninvited. They stepped inside and spoke clearly. I heard the threats, they said. I saw the suitcase. I saw the boxes. The color drained from faces around the room. This is getting out of hand, someone snapped. No, one of the visitors replied. This is getting clear. They turned back to me. We're going to recommend temporary separation, they said. The words hit like thunder. What does that mean? Someone demanded. It means, the visitor said slowly, she will not be forced to leave tonight. Relief washed through me. But it didn't last. However, the visitor continued, we need to ensure her safety. They looked around again. And right now, they added, this environment is not calm. The room exploded. You can't take her. She belongs here. This is our house. The visitor remained calm. This is not a punishment, they said. This is protection. They turned to me. Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight? They asked. I hesitated. I hadn't planned for this. Then I remembered the bag. The calls. The people who said they would come if I needed them. Yes, I said. Someone laughed bitterly. So she wins. They sneered. I looked at them. This isn't about winning, I said. It's about surviving. I went to my room and grabbed my bag. As I walked back through the living room, I felt every eye on me. Some angry. Some afraid. Some shocked. At the door, I stopped. I never wanted this, I said quietly. I just wanted to belong. No one answered. Outside, the air felt cold but clean. As I stepped off the porch, I heard shouting behind me. This isn't over. You'll regret this. I didn't turn around. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. As the car door closed and we pulled away, my phone buzzed one last time. A message. You made a mistake. Tomorrow, everything changes. I stared out the window, my reflection staring back at me. Because tomorrow, I would finally stop running. And when the truth came out in full, it would destroy everything they built on lies. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. I woke up in a place that was not my own, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, listening to a silence that felt different from the one I had left behind. This silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't threatening. It was calm. For the first time in a long time, I took a deep breath without fear pressing on my chest. But I knew something. Peace like this never lasts when the truth is still unfinished. Before I continue, let me say this. If this story has touched you, if you believe no one deserves to be silenced or pushed aside, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss stories like this. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. Now let me finish what I started. My phone buzzed just after sunrise. No threats this time. No warnings. Just one short message. We need to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood up, opened my bag, and took out the blue folder. Everything was there. Every paper. Every note. Every truth they hoped I would never use. I wasn't running anymore. I arrived later that day with my head held high. They were already there. Quiet. Stiff. Nervous. No shouting. No fake smiles. Just fear sitting in the room like an unwanted guest. I sat down slowly and placed the blue folder on the table. This ends today, I said. Someone scoffed. You think you control this now? I opened the folder. I don't think, I replied. I know. I laid the papers out one by one. The money I contributed. The signatures. The promises. The proof of the planned sale. The attempts to remove me quietly. The room went silent. No excuses this time. No lies left to hide behind. You were going to sell the house, I said. And you were going to do it by pretending I didn't exist. No one denied it. That was all the answer I needed. I stayed quiet because I loved you, I continued. I stayed silent because I thought peace was more important than truth. I paused. I was wrong. I stood up. You don't get to decide who is family, I said. You don't get to erase someone just because they're inconvenient. Tears filled one pair of eyes. Anger filled another. But I felt nothing except clarity. I will not be pushed aside again, I said. Not today. Not ever. The decision was made. The sale stopped. The pressure ended. The silence broke. I didn't take revenge. I took my voice back. I didn't destroy them. I refused to disappear. When I walked out of that room, something lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't weak. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't powerless. I was heard. And here is the truth I want you to remember. Sometimes, the people who try the hardest to silence you are the ones most afraid of what you might say. If you've ever felt pushed aside, if you've ever been told you don't belong, if you've ever been made to feel small in your own family, know this. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And silence is not peace when it costs you yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been silenced by someone you trusted? Your story deserves to be heard too.